All right, here I am on location today again at one of my lovely local parks at a beautiful overlook, which you can't quite see from the video here, but there's the Tulsa Skyline right there, and I'm going to be painting that. And I'm going to be painting it from my car because even though I'm here fairly early in the morning, it is already just way too hot to be outside. So I'm going to paint it from my car. So here we go. All right, so here I am in my car, and hopefully I can kind of zoom up on this so you can see it a little bit better. That is what I'm going to be painting. I don't know exactly how to get closer than that for you so that you can see it better, but I guess just paint it for you. So here we go. All right, so as per usual, I did not film the drawing part because I just don't have enough phone battery for that. But here we have the little skyline right here and all the trees and stuff underneath it. So I'm going to paint this in gouache, which is all there and ready for me. But since you can hear all of my nasty air conditioner noise because of how hot it is outside, I believe I will leave the commentary off until I get home, and I'll do a voiceover just to spare you all of the air conditioner noise. Starting by mixing colors for my sky, and I'm going to go ahead and mix the ultramarine blue with a tiny little bit of phthalo blue, and then we're just going to run that across the entire top, make it a little bit darker at the top and then lighter closer to the skyline. That's just the way that I always do it because that's a very, very common effect. I was going to start working on my trees, so I mixed some Sap Green with some burnt umber to make it a little bit more natural color, but then I decided I didn't want to quite start on the trees yet, so I went ahead and started mixing some ultramarine blue with some Carbazole Violet, and then graying that down with lemon yellow, and we're going to use that for the skyline. Before I add the skyline in though, the sky needs to dry just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and start on the river, and this is really just very watery ultramarine blue, and I'm just adding that in here so that I can give the sky a chance to dry for a sec. And since it is so hot and since my air conditioner is on, it did dry fairly quickly, so I went ahead and started adding in the skyline. And I'm basically going to just take that color all the way across in the very back because it is very, very grayish back there. I started with my 1/2-inch flat brush to get in the horizon line, and now I'm switching to my little 1/4-inch flat brush so that I can get in these tiny little buildings because it is pretty small compared to the rest of it, and they're supposed to be straight, so this little flat brush helps quite a bit. And you'll notice I'm actually using my gouache very, very watery here. I do that quite a lot. I almost use it as watercolor in the beginning, pretty much. And then if I need to have some more opacity or if I need to correct some mistakes, then is when I take my gouache into the more opaque area of things. I really love gouache for urban sketching and plein air painting for that reason. You can do it thin or you can do it thick and you can cover up mistakes. It really is quite versatile medium for plein air and things like that. When you're painting on the fly and making mistakes and going too fast, you can kind of have a little bit of leeway to change up. Now, since this is in direct sunlight, it is drying out really quickly, especially since I have my air conditioner on. So I've got some blooms and things like that going on. So I really am just going back over this to kind of mitigate some of that issue because I just don't love that kind of thing. But then I get a thicker consistency of that same color, and I bring in a tree line that is in front of that. And then for the tree line that is closest to the river, I'm going to go ahead and take that exact same color, but then I'm going to mix in some of the green that I mixed earlier so that we can start to see a little bit of that green coming in, because in the very far background, everything looks gray, but as it starts to move closer, you start to see a little bit more of that color. So I'm adding in some of that green to get that effect. And now we're getting even closer, so we're going to go ahead and mix in some more of that green into the color as it gets closer and closer to the river and closer to our eye. It's time to get some of the dirt going on here. So I've got some yellow ochre. I'm mixing in some burnt umber to that and a little bit of Payne's gray. And I'm going to begin to add in the shoreline here and also, to be honest with you, the sandbars in the middle of the river. This is the Arkansas River and it runs directly through the middle of Tulsa. And to be honest with you, when it's not flooding in like spring, it is always kind of lacking in water. So there's a lot of sandbars and I pretty much just call it the Arkansas Sandbar just for fun. We have a bridge here going over the river. So I'm using that gray, only making it a little bit darker than it was in the background. And we're just brushing that in here kind of loosely. Now it's time to add in the park aspect of this. So I've got my green that I mixed here and I've watered it down quite a bit and I'm just adding in all of there's a tree line that is kind of behind some of the trees that are in front of that. And I'm just adding that in right now in the back. And then I'll add some shadow and things like that to it in just a little bit. But right now I'm just blocking in that color. Next, I mix up that color a little bit darker so that we can start to bring in some of the shadow at the bottom of the trees, of course. And I just add that in very loosely at the bottom of all this tree line back here. For the grass area, I'm really just going to grab some of this olive green right here and I'm just going to swipe it across the entire area. It's a little bit on the yellowish side, so I'll probably bring back some of the sap green into it to make it a little cooler at some point. But for now, it's fine. It's good for a base color for all the grass. And here's where I add in a little bit of that sap green to make it a little bit cooler on the grass. For the trees that are in front of that main tree line, I'm going to go ahead and start using some of that olive green around the edges where the sunlight is hitting and adding in some yellow ochre as well and probably some cadmium yellow also to make a little bit of a contrast from the background. And then I'm going to begin to add in some of the other color with the sap green in the middle of those trees. You got to swipe in a little bit of a shadow underneath these trees here. And then I mix in a little bit of Payne's gray to my color and bring in a darker shadow color on the bottom of the trees. I'm using my Skyline gray as a base here, but adding a little bit of burnt umber to that. I'm going to use that for the little pathways here. I think the pathway could be a little lighter, so I go ahead and swipe in some titanium white to lighten it up. For the tree trunks, I'm mixing some burnt umber with some Payne's gray and pretty much just almost black because it's in such silhouette because they're so far away. But I'm going to go ahead and swipe in those little tree trunks and a little bit of branches here and there at the top. And I think we'll just call that done because, I mean, it doesn't need a ton of detail. It's very far away. We'll put a little bit of shadow on the old overpass here, a little fake car just for giggles. Then we're taking our sap green mix and going to go ahead and add in some shadows along the road, shadows under some of the trees. Then I'm adding some Payne's gray into my green mixture here just to add in some of these deep dark shadows and really just afford a little bit of differentiation between that tree line and the trees that are in front of it. You know, normally something that would be behind and further in the distance would be lighter, but this I think just needed to have some more contrast. So I'm taking a little bit of creative license. And honestly, it looks darker in the picture anyway, because there's a lot of deep dark shadow in that tree line. I decided we could use a little bit of dry brushing texture in this foreground, so I'm using one of the darker greens for that. Very, very dry mixture on my brush, and scraping it along the texture of that paper. Just a really nice way to add some texture. Just adding some more definition to the front three trees, darkening up at the bottom, lightening up at the top to where the sunlight is hitting. And I think for this far right one, I might as well just go ahead and add in some cadmium yellow to the very top here and just, you know, bring that sunlight out. The river is looking a little flat to me, so I'm going to go ahead and add in some white details. It's not rushing and roaring by any means, but there is a little bit of movement in the water, so we'll just put that white in there for that. It was kind of a spur of the moment decision to add this in here, but just to frame this and to show that I'm on an overlook, looking out over this scene, I'm going to go ahead and add in some of this like grass edging around it that I can see in my vision. I was going to leave it out, but I think it adds a little bit of context here, so I'm just going to go ahead and add that in here, and after that, I think we're done. All right, I think I'm gonna call that a day. I think that's done. I definitely don't want to keep messing with it because I kind of like the loose feel of it. So there it is, and then there it is there. So that was a lot of fun. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, all of that stuff, because that's how this channel gets to grow. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again next time.